Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look for and at exoplanets, or at least exoplanet systems. Exoplanets, the planets that go around other stars, they are something that we have discussed on this channel before. There's Jupiter just disappearing in the evening now to show a planet in our solar system. Exoplanets are other solar systems, planets going around other stars. Or at least they usually are. There have been reports and possible sightings of rogue planets, planets that do not have a star that they are orbiting around. Based on everything we know so far, planets form around stars. So any rogue planets that we see flying through space without a star, they were probably ejected from their solar system, or perhaps fell away from their star, spiraled away from their star, when their star reached the end of its life. Looking at the sky here, just as we would see it in the city, I've highlighted some of the exoplanets. And you should be able to tell already that these stars are visible to the naked eye and have planets around them. So this star here in Leo, there we go, Gamma 1 Leo or Gamma 1 Leonid. So this is not the brightest or the second brightest or the third or the fourth. This is around the fifth brightest star in Leo. And we can see that it has a planet going around it. Now, if we take a closer look, there we go, Algebra. This star is bright enough to have its own name, its own sort of, in this case, an Arabic name given to it by ancient astronomers, whereas this designation is the modern designation that we'd give the star, telling us what constellation it's in and roughly how bright it is. This is Pollux, definitely famous enough to get its real name up here, the second brightest star in the constellation of Gemini, and it has a planet going around it as well. If we take a look at the side down here, we've got mass, which I believe is in terms of Jupiter's. So this is a little bit bigger than Jupiter. We're not too sure about its radius. Its period is longer than an Earth year. So this planet, in days, yeah, still a little longer than an Earth year. This planet takes a little longer than our Earth to get around the sun. But 589 days, that's pretty close to the orbit of Mars. So it's still quite close to its star for a massive planet, and this is something that we often find. Here is another planet, very massive, pretty short period for a massive planet, pretty close to the length of our year. These are just some of the planets that we can see the stars of with their naked eye. Aldebaran here, the brightest star in the constellation Taurus, that's a very clear and easy star to see. Of course, these stars in Leo, Gemini, and Taurus, they're only going to be visible at certain times of the year. Turning back around to the north, and we have a star visible to the naked eye all year long here in Ireland. This star is more reliable than the Plough or the Big Dipper. It won't disappear close to the horizon. Just up here, the second brightest star in the constellation of Ursa Minor, Beta Ursa Minoris. It is just across from the Plough in the Little Dipper. Now, unfortunately, the Little Dipper, or Ursa Minor, it's a tricky constellation to spot here in the city. We have enough light pollution to block out some of the stars that would otherwise make this a recognizable shape. So even if you are in the city, if you can find the Plough to find the North Star, just across from the North Star, you might see the very faint shape of a Little Dipper. But that is Kocha Beta Ursa Minoris. If we travel out to the countryside and get rid of the light pollution, of course more stars will be visible. That also means more suns for other solar systems are visible. Now, I'm only bringing us quite far into the countryside here. Not to a perfect dark sky, just a good dark sky. Something like this. So we can see here that the sky is full of planets, and a lot of them are going around stars that we can see with our naked eye in this view here. And if we take a slightly closer look, more of them will pop out, which might obscure the stars we're really trying to see. But there we go. There's the shape of the Little Dipper. We can see just there at the front of it is a star with a planet going around it. There are quite a lot of these. There are a lot of stars with planets going around them. We've found tens of thousands of these other solar systems now in the modern day. If we move forward a little bit towards morning time, of course, we'll be looking at different stars. There are still plenty of planets orbiting around the stars out here. We can see that there are some planets in towards our Milky Way, just in here. Let's see which one this is. This is one of the stars in Ophiuchus. It's there as a V. That might be a Mu Ophiuchus or Ophiuchi. And this is in that constellation, the 13th sign of the zodiac. If you want to take a look back at my video about the ecliptic, it'll tell you a little bit more about the zodiacal constellations and how many of them there really are. Here's a nice bright star. That's Kochab again. Of course, a nice bright star, easy to see even in the city. These are the exoplanets we would get to see in the northern hemisphere. If we get rid of the ground and take a look down south, we can see that there are still a few. If I remove the atmosphere to make everything nice and visible, there's quite a lot of exoplanets orbiting stars that are visible in the southern hemisphere as well. Unfortunately, due to the history of astronomy and the history of our planet, there are a few more observatories and a few more astronomically inclined universities here in the northern hemisphere. But thanks to programs like the European Southern Observatories and the South African Large Telescope, we are getting more and more discoveries from the southern hemisphere, and of course there is a whole other sky down there for us to study. I'll remove the atmosphere for us here in the northern hemisphere as well. That's the ground. Here's the atmosphere, just to give a better idea of how many planets we have found. Up here is the area observed by the Kepler Space Telescope. I made a big deal about the Kepler Space Telescope in the previous video about exoplanets, but for now I will say that this dense patch is caused by a telescope looking only at that region of the sky. If the same telescope looked at every region of the sky in as much detail, the entire sky would presumably be blanketed like this. According to our best guesses at the moment, if you look for planets this hard everywhere in the sky, you'll find this many planets. It looks like we've got a nice little cluster down here, a few different exoplanets that were all discovered together. And we can see by their names, they were all discovered by the same telescope, SOI there. So these names that come from the telescope that discovered them, they can help you out and give you an idea of what discovered what telescope did the job, and what kind of number particular telescopes have caught. So we can see there's actually a few telescopes that have taken a look at that particular star. We can see that popping up for a few different objects in the sky. For a few of these long strings of numbers, that's the number of the star in a catalogue. It's not too hard to name a large portion of the stars that we can see in the sky, but when you start adding in the millions and millions of stars that are invisible to the human eye and require a telescope, actually naming them all is going to get pretty hard. So there's a bunch of exoplanets discovered by the KMT telescope, or the Ogle telescope. We can see a few of those there at the side as well. So looking here in towards the core of our Milky Way, it's very interesting that we can see a lot of planets. Looking in towards the dusty, hard to see core of our galaxy, there's still plenty of planets in there. And even if we take a look out towards the edge of our galaxy, here with the Kepler Space Telescope, we're looking almost outside the disk of our galaxy, roughly towards the side, and looking here towards sort of the back of our galaxy on the way out of the Milky Way, we're still seeing large collections of planets visible over there. A lot of these stars and planets, they are named after the telescope that discovered them. I will briefly mention, as I have in previous videos, the star and planet that were named after stories from Irish mythology. It's nice to have a star and a planet named in your language, especially if it's not one of the big popular languages like English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. Those languages are very popular and well known. Irish, Gaeilge, not quite as well known generally. So over here, this is Cor Caroli, just under the handle of the plough or the Big Dipper. Deep in here is a star and planet now known as Tirin and Bran. Tirin for the star, for the mother of the puppies, and Bran for one of the puppies. According to Irish mythology, there were two puppies, Bran and Sciolán, so hopefully we'll get another planet discovered around Tirin to name Sciolán in the future. Taking a look here, we can see that it's quite a large planet, quite a big radius, a very, very short period. So this is a big, hot planet, big like Jupiter, hot like Mercury, right up next to its star. If you're orbiting around the star in just 1 1/3 Earth days, that's a much shorter year than anything in our solar system. So it must be very, very close to its parent star, which is great for us. If you have a big planet close to its parent star, it's going to block out a load of light every time it passes in front of it. That's going to make it much, much easier for us to discover than, for example, a smaller planet that's orbiting a little further from its parent star. So it's harder to discover a planet that is like Earth, small and rocky and pretty far from its parent star in our star's habitable zone. It's a lot easier to discover a big gassy planet like Jupiter that's melting right up next to its star, which really means it's easier for us to discover planets that are not like the Earth and would not be hospitable to life as we know it. It's easier to discover them than it is to discover planets that might be capable of hosting life like our Earth. Which is unfortunate, but with tens of thousands discovered, we have discovered a few reasonably Earth-like planets, and fingers crossed, we'll discover more in the future. If you'd like to stay up to date about potential future discoveries, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video if you like this brief look at where you can spot some exoplanets in the sky. If you enjoyed listening to this video, you might enjoy reading about it on my website, queebeanscontent.ie. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.